From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
Thanks for tuning in for this Thursday edition of Washington Watch. Coming up, the House is now back at work. The media is also at work, trying to dig up damaging information on House Speaker Mike Johnson, and they've apparently found it. Several outlets running with a story that Mike Johnson and his wife Kelly have a covenant marriage. It just so happens I know a little bit about Louisiana's covenant marriage law. I authored the legislation back in 1997, but I had help passing it. The House Majority Leader Steve Scalise was in the Louisiana legislature with me, and he helped me pass it. And he'll join me to help me talk about it in just a moment. As the House gets back to work, there are many pressing issues, including the November 17th government funding deadline. With insufficient time to accomplish the appropriations bills, what approach will the House take? We'll find out when Mississippi Congressman Michael Guest, a member of the House Appropriation Committee, joins me in just a moment. We are also going to get a report from Congressman Glenn Grothman, chairman of a House Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee that held a hearing yesterday that was entitled Faith Under Fire, an examination of global religious persecution.
When religious freedom is not protected, extremism and authoritarianism flourish. The more the U.S. can do to advocate and advance this critical freedom, the more we will deter the very groups who wish to do us harm.
That was Global Christian Relief President and CEO Dr. David Curry testifying before the subcommittee yesterday that there's a link between religious freedom and national security. Well, what is contributing to the rise of persecution? We're going to talk about it later when Congressman Grothman joins us. As Iran inches closer to escalating the conflict in the Middle East, some say it's time for the U.S. to send Iran a message.
We need to tell Iran clearly what happens if you escalate against America, you escalate against Israel. You will be in the crosshairs of American military response. It is your choice to make. If you want a war with America, you will lose it. If you continue to try to throw gasoline on a fire, you're going to regret it.
That was Senator Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor yesterday. He joins us a little later here on this edition of Washington Watch. Our word for today comes from Philippians chapter 4. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. So how can we have peace when it appears the world is spinning out of control? Well, look at verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. So the question is, what are you watching? What are you meditating or thinking about? If you're being inundated with negative news from a humanist worldview, the legacy media, guess what? You're going to be anxious. We're not to bury our heads in the sand. Rather, we're to confront the challenges by going to God in prayer with a thankful heart. Join me each morning, Monday through Friday, for a short devotional based upon the daily reading at TonyPerkins.com. Well, it didn't take long for Democrats and their legacy media allies to bring out the knives for Speaker of the House Mike Johnson following his election yesterday. And while we do need to be praying for him amid these attacks, and you can do so by texting the word speaker to 67742. We've got a prayer pledge, and we're standing with him in prayer. We also need to be praying for the House, for the entire Congress, and we're doing that as well. So they can take on these difficult challenges that are ahead of them. I mean, we've got the Middle East. It's currently a tinderbox. Government funding set to expire in just over 3 weeks. There's a lot to be accomplished. But I want to talk a little bit about these attacks that are coming just one day into the job. Joining me now to discuss this and much more is House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Louisiana. Leader Scalise, welcome back to the program.
Tony, always great to be back with you.
So I don't know if you heard me at the opening, but they've found some damaging information on Mike Johnson. He has a covenant marriage, and you know a little bit about that because you helped me pass that back in 1997.
It was your bill when you were a state representative. I was proud to support the bill, and Mike Johnson was one of the earliest ones to marry his beautiful wife Kelly, and was featured nationally about it. You know, and if that's what they're going to attack him on, then boy, they've really found a great one. Let's keep telling that story.
Well, let me say this. I just want to commend you, Steve, for the way you handled all of this in the last few weeks. I know you've got many things going on, and we had you on the program, and we've been praying for you, for your health. But also, you were being considered for speaker, and that was a difficult process. And then when everybody unified around Mike yesterday, you came right there with him, and you were right at his side. And I'm excited, quite frankly, for the House, because now there's going to be a seamless relationship in the leadership with the Speaker and the leader and the rest working together to move the Congress forward.
Well, Tony, it was so important that we come back together and get the House open together and unify. And Mike Johnson's a dear friend. I've known him for almost 20 years, back to when we were in the State House. We fought a lot of battles together. Mike and I are both former Republican Study Committee chairmen, so conservatives at heart, and we want the same things for the country. And so, philosophically, we're right on the same page. I met with him yesterday. We rolled out a new calendar last night. We were supposed to be out back in our districts the next 2 weeks. We're coming back to D.C. because we've got a lot of work to do to make up for lost time, to get our appropriations process back on track, to get spending under control, to get our border secure, to lower inflation, to support Israel, to stand up to Iran. We're bringing a piece of legislation next week, Tony, to ban Iran exports of oil. They're making billions of dollars selling their oil and using that to fund Hamas to go and invade and attack and kill Jews and Americans and others in Israel. I mean, why would we be helping Iran? Biden administration dropped sanctions on Iran to let them sell more oil and make billions of dollars. We're bringing a bill to stop that. We can make more energy in America. We can make it cleaner, and that money doesn't go to Hamas. So we're going to bring those bills next week. Mike's ready to get us to work, and I am really proud of him, but proud to be there with him as the majority leader to get our agenda back on track. And I think most Americans, as they get to know Mike Johnson, they're going to love his passion, his love for this country, and his desire to get back to the constitutional principles, Tony, that you and I know we hold so dear, but are being threatened by the left right now.
Steve, yesterday in his remarks before the House, he made reference to, I'm actually quoting scripture, about how, difficulties, persevering through that, it makes us stronger, gives us greater hope. The House has been through a lot just this year, since this new Congress, but the last 3 weeks. In your opinion, is the Congress stronger? Is there more hope? I mean, I certainly saw it yesterday, but you're there right in the middle of it. Is there more optimism moving forward?
There absolutely is. And look, the last 3 weeks, it's not like we were just sitting around. I mean, we were having a lot of internal conversations, Tony, about how we make the institution work better. This town is broken. Washington has been failing the American people for too long. Both parties. You don't see the Democrats doing anything to try to change what is broken. They're making things worse for families. They're moving towards socialism. We spent the last 3 weeks, and I was involved in a lot of these conversations, talking about how to refocus on the things that matter to the struggling families, the hardworking families, the people that get up every day and go to work. And they're tired of waking up going, what is a federal agency going to do to come after me today when I'm just trying to go about my life? What federal agency is going to try to make a small business have to shut down because they're putting burdens and regulations that make no sense, the woke stuff coming out of every agency, all of this garbage that makes families struggle, raises costs, and does nothing to promote what is great about this country. How do we confront it better? And that's what we're focused on. You don't see, the Senate did nothing, by the way, for the last 3 weeks, and they weren't in disarray. They had a functioning majority, and they didn't do any work.
That's nothing new.
The press doesn't cover that.
That's not new.
I don't mind if the press covers the fact that we spent 3 weeks focusing on how to make the House work better, because now we are refocused. And our focus is going to benefit the American people who are sick and tired of what's broken about Washington.
Well, you said the Senate's not working. Well, I mean, that's really nothing new. But I do want to play a clip from the Senate scare leader, Chuck Schumer, today on the Senate floor. Clip 5.
If Speaker Johnson repeats the mistakes of Speaker McCarthy, if he tumbles down the MAGA road, it will be inevitable that the House finds itself trapped in even more chaos very soon.
So I think the message from scare leader Schumer is the Republicans in the House need to wave a white flag and just sign up and go with our agenda.
Yeah, and they don't even know what MAGA means. It's like when the Tea Party movement was emerging, and Nancy Pelosi called it fomentum and all those words, and then she lost the majority not long after because it was people sick and tired of Washington trampling over the rights of hardworking people. That's what the left has been doing for the last few years since COVID, when you saw all the shutdowns in the blue states, and then you saw the red states saying, we're going to open up and embrace freedom, and we're going to let parents have a say in their kids' education. And the Democrats were the ones standing in the way, embracing socialism and shutdowns. And the people who could move, they moved out of blue states and moved to red states. Well, we can't move out of the United States. We have to fix what's broken in this country, and that means we need to change the people that are running Washington. And Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are not going to be in office come the end of next year because I think the American people are sick and tired of the socialist movement, the big government socialism. It's failed everywhere. It's been tried in other countries. We cannot let them ruin this great country, and they're trying to.
Congressman Steve Scalise, one final question for you. We're almost up against a break, but the House is just one branch. You've got the one chamber of the legislative branch. How are you going to drive that contrast so the American people see the choice that's before them come next November?
Tony, I think it starts with the border and with spending. And I think the American people are already with us. This is where Joe Biden really doesn't get it. You don't just have Republicans. You've got Democrat mayors. Look at Abrams in New York. You got mayors all across the country. The mayor of Dallas just switched parties from Democrat to Republican. If they don't realize what's going on in this country, because they opened the border, millions of people come across, including people on the terrorist watch list, people from Middle Eastern countries that want to do us harm that have not been vetted. At a time when you just saw how dangerous the world has gotten, Joe Biden has opened up our border and let the drug cartels take over and bring in drugs that are killing our young people. People are sick and tired of it in every community in America, and he won't do anything. We are going to stand up and fight, and we're not just fighting alone. We're fighting now with Democrats who are sick and tired of it too. The American people are figuring this out, and Joe Biden won't. And if he doesn't get on board and work with us to fix it, he won't be president come the end of next year.
Yeah. Congressman Steve Scalise, again, excellent job this week. You just made, I'm so proud of you. You've done such a great job, and just appreciate you coming on today, and always great to talk with you.
Well, appreciate your faith. Appreciate your prayers along the way, Tony. I know you pray for us, for our country. Your listeners have prayed for my health, and I thank you because my health is getting dramatically better. But this country needs to come back. Everybody who believes in freedom here in America and the world counts on us. We cannot let this great country fail. We won't.
You're absolutely right. Love you, brother. Have a good weekend.
Love you. Thank you. God bless.
All right, folks, pray. You heard it right there from Steve Scalise, but let's pray for the Speaker and the Congress. Text the word Speaker to 67742 and join the effort. All right, more Washington Watch on the other side of the break. Don't go away. We're back after this.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there is the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch, the website, TonyPerkins.com. As I was mentioning as we were going into the break, we are calling folks to 21 days of prayer for Speaker Johnson and the Congress so that they can get things back on track moving forward. And if you'd like to join in this effort, you can sign a pledge to pray, text speaker to 67742, and I'm going to share that with him, or you can go to frc.org/House Speaker. Well, now that the House of Representatives has a speaker, Congress is back to work. And with government funding set to expire November the 7th, spending negotiations have become a top priority for Speaker Johnson and his Republican colleagues. Now, conservatives agree that continuing resolutions for stopgap funding are not ideal, but we've only got less than about 3 weeks, and there's no way to get the appropriations done, not within that time frame. So what is the way forward? Joining me now to talk about this, Mississippi Congressman Michael Guest. He is a member of the House Appropriations Committee, so he should know. Congressman Guest represents the 3rd Congressional District. Congressman Guest, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you. And look, I want to tell you how excited I am that Mike Johnson is our new Speaker of the House. He is a humble, godly man. You contrast him with our last Democrat Speaker of the House. You have someone who is a man of faith. He's pro-life, believes in traditional family values. He values the Constitution, believes in limited government, rule of law. He is going to be an incredible speaker, and I'm honored to have the opportunity to have voted for him and to serve under his leadership.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see some great things ahead. And one of those things, he's already involved in the negotiations involving government funding. So what do we know? What are we looking at in terms of addressing the November 17th government funding issue?
Well, I have to say that Mike has really hit the ground running. 2 days as Speaker. Yesterday, he was able to get to the floor a resolution supporting Israel and condemning Hamas. Today, his second day as Speaker, we passed one of our 12 appropriations bills, the Energy and Water Bill. And so now we've seen that the House of Representatives has passed 5 of the 12 spending bills. We know that our friends in the Senate have yet to pass a single spending bill out of their entire body. But we have a very aggressive timetable. I think Steve Scalise mentioned that just a few moments ago on your show. That Mike will work to see that all appropriations bills are brought to the floor in the next 3 weeks. But we will have to address the fact that government funding will run out. Even if the House is able to pass all the appropriations bills, we won't have time to marry the House bill with the Senate bills and get those bills to the president's desk. So it will necessitate at some point a short-term continuing resolution to give us time to finish the work on that process.
Michael, I want to come back to that short-term stopgap measure, but I want to go back to something you said a moment ago. The Senate has not yet passed any of their appropriations bills out of the chamber. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they have not been absent a leader, maybe an effective leader, but not absent a leader. Chuck Schumer's running the Senate over there. They've not yet passed a single appropriations bill?
That's correct. And historically, the last several years, that's what you see. The Senate does not pass appropriation bills out of the entire Senate. They will try to use the committee markup, the bills as they come out of committee to negotiate with the House, but they have yet to pass one. The House has taken up 6. We've passed 5 of the 6. The ag bill, we were unable to get across the finish line. We will make changes to that, and we will renegotiate and bring that before the House for a full vote again. But we've been able to pass almost half of the appropriation bills in the House. And again, that includes the fact that we had the debt ceiling negotiations where we were unable to mark those bills up because we didn't know the spending number. And then the 3 weeks that we've lost legislative time as we were electing Mike Johnson to be our next speaker.
Well, but it appears that maybe the media just missed that aspect because I haven't seen them reporting on the fact that the Senate's done nothing.
Well, and you're exactly right. You know, the House is often blamed for things when we are actually moving. I mean, we are much further along under Republican leadership than we ever were when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker. We were never this far along when Democrats controlled this chamber. And so even with the chaos that we've seen over the last several weeks, Republicans are working hard to honor the promise that we made to the American public, which is we want to get back to regular order. We want to pass 12 individual spending bills. We don't want to get jammed with an omnibus bill, which is what we've seen time and time again.
So let's go to that continuing resolution, short-term spending gap. Before all of this kind of blew up, there had been a proposed continuing resolution, short-term funding, that actually dialed back government spending, if I recall correctly, about 8%. It dealt with border security issues. Are we going to see something like that again?
I hope so. I hope that Mike will look at what Republicans offered before. Again, you talk about the fact that it had border security, that there was a debt commission which would look at long-term spending, what we can do to bring that spending curve down. And it also had a 30% across-the-board spending cut that excluded programs. Of course, this dealt only with discretionary spending, not mandatory. But if you take out defense and veterans, it was and Homeland, it was a 30% across-the-board cut. I hope that Mike will offer something like that again, allow us the opportunity to vote on that, and then we can send it to the Senate and let the Senate respond as to whether or not they plan to keep the government open or not.
So do you think you'll be able to get that type of support among your Republican colleagues in the House for a measure like that?
I do. You know, we were very close last time under Speaker McCarthy, came just a few votes short. I will tell you that no Democrat in this chamber will support that. So we as Republicans are going to have to carry that exclusively.
I thought it was a good proposal. I mean, you're dialing back spending, you're addressing the border. And if I'm not mistaken, Speaker Johnson announced yesterday that there would be a bipartisan debt committee that will be looking at debt.
He did. He announced that yesterday from the roster and after he had been sworn in. But you're exactly right. You know, as far as this is the first time since I've been in Congress where we actually propose legislation in a CR to cut spending. Every other time we've either increased spending or we've left spending flat. This would have been a decrease in spending. This is something that the American public wants to see Congress do.
I hope it gets teed up again. Congressman Michael Guest, thanks so much for joining us today. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate you letting me be on.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we've got more Washington Watch on the other side of the break. We're going to go to Wisconsin Congressman Glenn Grothman. He's going to join us to talk about a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday about the rise in religious persecution, who's being targeted and why. That's next. Don't go away.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. Leah Sheribu, a Christian teenager in Nigeria, remains a captive of Boko Haram for her refusal to renounce her Christian faith. Chinese pastor Wang Yi is serving a 9-year sentence for speaking publicly against the Chinese government. In Pakistan, Asif Pervez is on death row for allegedly sending a blasphemous text message. All of this because people in power decided different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us. The website, TonyPerkins.com. Be sure and check it out. Lots of resources there for you, as well as contact information for all of our guests. Well, yesterday, a lot happening on Capitol Hill, as we've been talking about, but yesterday, the House Oversight and Accountability Committee's Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs, held a hearing. The hearing was entitled Faith Under Fire, an examination of global religious persecution, and an important hearing. You know, this is an issue I care very deeply about. Having served as chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, this is something we continue to track. Now, witness testimony shined a light on how the Biden administration frequently, and I saw this myself in my last year on the commission, they overlook religious persecution, routinely waiving sanctions that should be in effect. And again, we've talked about this on the program. But the Biden administration, instead of focusing on religious freedom, they're insistent on exporting the LGBT agenda. And this damages U.S. global standing and creates instabilities that, quite frankly, they have a threatening effect on our national security. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Glenn Grothman. He is the chairman of the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Wisconsin. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be on the show, and very good topics to bring up today.
Well, thank you for leading this hearing. This is something that under this administration has completely been lost. It was the #1 foreign policy of the Trump administration, but you're hard-pressed to find any evidence that they're working to promote it or protect it.
It's going the other way, and particularly with regard to Christians. There are a variety of religious, let's say, minorities that are persecuted around the world. But if you look what's going on in Nigeria, say, as Christians are being killed by the Muslim group there. You look at Armenia and what is being done to those folks by people from Azerbaijan. It's just horrific, as well as just people being suppressed, kicked out of their country, say the Catholic priests in Nicaragua. You know, years ago, Ronald Reagan tried to get a handle on the communist mindset in Nicaragua. They are now back. And so all around the world, we have religious persecution, which can happen to other groups too, right? Can happen to even one Muslim against the other in Pakistan, what have you. Can happen to Muslims in Red China. But the #1 group, I think, that's under attack today is Christians.
We don't hear much about this. I know during my time on the commission, we would focus on that, but the media wants to focus, and quite frankly, it's more acceptable to talk about the persecution of other religious minorities. But when you bring up Christians, and we're seeing increased persecution in India, Pakistan, some of these that we're nurturing our relations with in terms of our foreign policy. But is there any evidence, Congressman Grothman, that this is being discussed in our high-level negotiations with these other countries?
Oh, I don't think so. India is an important one. It recently became the most populated country in the world. China is no longer the most populated country in the world. But there's kind of a anti-Christian feeling in India right now. We all, like to have a high opinion of Mr. Modi, who's running that country right now. But no question, very pro-Hindu at the expense of other groups, one of which is Christians.
So, Congressman, let me ask you, based on the testimony that came forth yesterday, was there a kind of a common thread woven between the different countries when it came to religious hostility and persecution?
Well, just that the United States does not appear to be weighing in. It doesn't seem to be a problem. And that's very concerning. And like you said, when you let off here, maybe the reason the U.S. government is not that concerned about Christians being persecuted is they themselves are weighing in on other countries with their LGBT agenda, their Planned Parenthood agenda, as we try to use our financial muscle or our foreign aid to make these countries less Christian. I mean, you might as well put a sign outside the current administration. We think there are too many Christians in the world, or we think people should not be living a Christian faith.
Well, I would agree. What we've tracked is that the LGBT agenda is the top priority in terms of foreign policy. In fact, the president himself just 3 weeks ago at the Human Rights Campaign annual dinner stated as such. And so as you juxtapose that with the previous administration, religious freedom was a top foreign policy priority, not to be found now. It's being crowded out. In fact, it's creating greater hostility to religious freedom as they push this LGBT stuff.
It's really a problem. You got to remember, when they push the LGBT stuff, what that means. They went absolutely ballistic when in Florida they tried to stop this gay teaching to 7-year-olds.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's what the agenda is. We want to introduce 5-year-olds to this lifestyle. We want to put it in their mind that this might be an option for them as they grow older. So it's what I would say a very extremist an extremist idea for schools.
Right.
And if the U.S. would push this idea beyond the United States and on other countries is beyond horrific.
And it becomes a national security issue because it creates greater instability globally. Congressman, we're out of time. Always great to see you. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
Glad to be on the show, and hope all your listeners weigh in with the government and say we don't like this Christian hostility from the United States.
We definitely will do that. Congressman Glenn Grothman of Wisconsin. All right, after the break, we're going to be joined by Senator Lindsey Graham, having just recently returned from the Middle East. He's got some news for us. Don't go away. We're back after this.
The world is hurting. Streets are filled with crime. Families are broken. Sin is celebrated, and God is mocked. Everywhere we look, the wages of our sin are on full display. As Christians, we know that surrender to God's will is the solution to our biggest problems, but not everyone agrees. Even in church, we hear people say the most important thing is to be tolerant, that we shouldn't impose our morality on other people, and that loving our neighbor means celebrating what they do. But you can't do that. It's not that you don't love your neighbor, you do, but you care about God's opinion more than your neighbor's opinion, and this makes you different. In fact, sometimes it makes you feel alone, like you're the only one. But there is good news. You are not alone, not even close. Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government, They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these SageCons yourself, go to frc.org/SageCon and take the quiz to find out. The world is hurting, and we have the solution. We can't do it alone, but we can do it if we work together. That's what we're working toward every day. Join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
I'm often asked by people, Tony, how do you stay encouraged? How do you deal with all of the stuff in Washington, D.C., the negative policies that are attacking our faith, our family, and our freedoms? Well, you want me to let you in on the secret? It's called the Word of God. And that is why the Family Research Council embarked on Stand on the Word, a 2-year journey through the Bible. It's a chronological Bible reading plan with just 10 to 15 minutes a day. In 2 years, you will have covered the entire Bible. And to go along with this, Monday through Friday, I do a morning devotional that goes along with the reading of the day. It's all designed to encourage you on this journey because the Word of God, as the psalmist said, in my affliction, here's my comfort. Your Word gives me life. That is our source of strength. To find out more, go to tonyperkins.com or frc.org/Bible. And I invite you to join me every morning for our Stand on the Word Bible devotion.
FRC, celebrating 40 years with Congresswoman Lisa McClain.
In Congress, it's tough. And you get hit, you get bombs thrown at you from all different sides. And at times, you have a tendency to get down. FRC approaches things in a very different way. It approaches it with a faith-based principle, in a faith-based manner, which is really lacking not only in Congress, but I would say in America today. FRC is an organization that provides an optimistic, hopeful, positive view of the future.
That was Congresswoman Lisa McClain, and we do approach it differently. We approach it from a biblical perspective as opposed to the legacy media looking at these things from a humanist worldview. All right? We're very clear about that. We don't hide it. All right, as war rages in Israel, Iran continues its own flex throughout the region. This month, nearly 24 American troops in Iraq and Syria have suffered injuries due to aerial attacks from militia groups backed by Tehran. Now, in a Rose Garden ceremony yesterday, President Biden said that he warned Iran's supreme leader to expect U.S. reaction if these strikes continue. How long are they going to continue? Well, many in Congress are saying, hey, it's time to act. But as the war in Israel creates a powder keg threatening to engulf the Middle East, how should the U.S. respond? Joining me now by phone to discuss this and more, Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Judiciary Committee, where he is the ranking member. He's on the Senate Appropriations Committee as well, and he just returned from a trip to the Middle East. Senator, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Let's start first. I want to get into Iran because that's very much a part of this discussion, but you just returned from Israel. Your impressions of being in Israel?
Can you say that again? I lost you for a second.
Yeah, you just returned from Israel. You went with a bipartisan delegation. Right. Your response to what you saw over there?
Okay, number one, it was worse than the Nazis. The crimes committed against the Jewish people, children burned, women raped. I've never seen such savagery in my life. They outdid the Nazis. Hamas is a religious, fanatical organization not trying to help the Palestinian people. They're trying to destroy all the Jews. They wouldn't exist without Iran. Israel is begging the United States to let Iran know that if the war expands, they will be threatened by us. The only thing between this war getting bigger is a strong America, and I am urging President Biden to up his game. 30 Americans have been injured since this started in Syria and Iraq. We have done nothing, and if Hezbollah comes after Israel in the north, that could be very devastating to Israel. So I am telling President Biden, all my Democratic friends and Republicans, put Iran on notice. If this war gets bigger, we're coming after you.
Is the Senate poised to do that in a bipartisan manner?
Well, you're the first I've told. I have very close to a bipartisan agreement with a resolution that would urge the use of military force against the Islamic Republic of Iran if there's an escalation in the north, if there's continued attacks on American troops in Syria and Iraq and other places. If we can say that bipartisan, that will be very helpful. I think there's some like-minded Democrats. I'm really close. Hopefully I can tell you and your listeners in a few days we did it.
Senator, you would not be alone in this. You have some former military leaders, generals here in the United States, saying that, look, Iran only understands action. Words don't mean a whole lot. And as they continue to attack through their proxies, American troops, if we don't do something, it's going to continue.
Well, Trump understood that. They were afraid of Trump. Trump kills, Soleimani, the head of the Revolutionary Guard that had killed Americans in the past. Trump put Iran on notice. Trump put them in a box. Biden doesn't have the deterrent effect that Trump did. President Biden needs to up his game. Our friends in Israel in their fight for their lives, pray for them. The bottom line here is Iran's Ayatollah has to believe that if this war expands, there won't be two fronts, there'll be three, that the United States will knock out your oil fields. The Iranian economy is dependent on oil. That's where they get the money. They're the largest state sponsor of terrorism on the planet. All the oil refineries are sitting out in the open. I've been saying for days now, weeks now, let Iran know if you try to come after us, you're going to be out of the oil business. If you escalate the fight against Israel, you're going to be out of the oil business.
This is Washington Watch, and my guest, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, joins us by phone. The Senate just got out, and he's at the airport getting ready to take off. Senator, I appreciate you taking a moment to join us. I want to go to what you identified and what others have pointed to as maybe a trigger for Iran using Hamas to go into Israel to disrupt what has been taking place in terms of conversations between Israel and Saudi Arabia and building on the Abraham Accords of peace in the Middle East.
You. Yes. Let me just, I'm about to go off to speak to the Republican Jewish Coalition, and the bottom line is, why did they do this now, Hamas and their puppets of Iran, to stop the efforts that you and I have been working on to have Saudi Arabia recognize the Jewish state called Israel, to end the Arab-Israeli conflict? It is a nightmare for Iran if the Arabs and the Israelis come together, leaving them out. That's what this was about, to destroy the deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel. That's what they're trying to do.
Well, there's a history here of when Arab nations begin to recognize Israel, their right to exist. I mean, we saw it in Egypt. Of course, we've had a few disruptions in that when the Muslim Brotherhood took over, but it's moving back to a working relationship between those two countries. If there's that type of recognition, we've seen it in the UAE, we're seeing it elsewhere. So this could be reshuffling the entire deck in the Middle East.
Well, that's why I like doing your show. We have a peace treaty between Jordan, Israel, Egypt, and Israel. The Abraham Accords, you had several Gulf states and Arab nations recognize Israel on Trump's watch. The big prize is Saudi Arabia. That's where the Islamic holy sites exist. Medina and Mecca, that's the heart and soul of Islam. To have the Saudi crown prince and his country recognize the Jewish state as being legitimate, accepting Jews in the Mideast. Israel's a legitimate country. Doing business with Israel, having peace agreements and treaties with the United States is the best thing in the world to keep our friends in Israel safe.
Right.
It takes the Mideast toward the light, away from the darkness, and it's Iran's worst nightmare is for the Arab world to join with Israel to move forward. That's what they're trying to stop. Pray for our friends in Israel. That's what they're trying to stop.
And you know, I'll just speak this from an evangelical. We know that we're never going to have permanent peace in the Middle East until the Prince of Peace returns, but I believe we have a responsibility to try to arrive at a managed peace that is workable and beneficial to our friends in Israel. I don't think a two-state solution has been one that has brought us any peace, but I think this approach of working with other Arab nations to recognize Israel's right to exist puts pressure on the Palestinian authorities and others.
Absolutely. And Saudi Arabia, part of the deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia, defense agreements, economic agreements, recognizing Israel has a peace for the Palestinians. But you can't, Hamas is not wanting a state for the Palestinians. They want to kill the Jews like the Nazis.
Well, they have a state.
They have to be destroyed.
They've had control of Gaza since 2007, since Hamas was elected as the leadership, the government there.
Yeah.
What have they done with it?
Gaza is used as a launching pad to kill Jews, and any Palestinian who wants to live with Israel in peace, they kill. So it's a terrorist enclave.
So
now, the Palestinian people.
Let me just ask you about that for just a moment, because Israel has been handcuffed in years past. Every time I was there in 2014 when they were lobbing rockets over. In fact, I spent a good bit of time in a bunker. And we always, the international community says, well, don't go too far. Stop right there. Is it going to be different this time, given what you saw?
Yeah.
You saw the evidence. You saw what they did.
Yeah.
Are we going to allow Israel to take care of business?
Well, I tell you, Lindsey Graham will. I'm going to give Israel the time and space to destroy Hamas. That's non-negotiable. They're religious Nazis. Their charter is to destroy Israel. What they did to children, babies in the crib, raping women, killing children in front of the parents, and vice versa, is beyond what the Nazis did, if there is such a thing. The bottom line here is they need the time and space to go in on the ground. You're a military guy. You can't destroy this organization from the air. Going on the ground and destroy Hamas, then work with the Arabs to create a better life for the Palestinians. That's the game plan. Don't put pressure on Israel to stop a military operation that will destroy religious Nazis.
Before I let you go, Senator, I want to talk about how the international pressure is already building. I want to play a clip from the Secretary General of the UN from Tuesday of this week. Now, I'm going to be very clear, he's tried to walk the comments back, but it's the second time he's made these comments. Clip number 4.
The attacks by Hamas did not happen in a vacuum. The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing.
Well, Senator, that was Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the UN. How can we expect to build international support for Israel when we're getting this out of the UN?
Well, I wrote a letter to him. I'll get it to you. He's trying to suggest there are two sides of this story. There's not. Hamas is not trying to help build up the Palestinian people. They're trying to kill all the Jews. That's their charter. There is no equivalency here. There is no vacuum. The head of the UN, the voice of the world, made one of the most inappropriate statements in modern history, suggesting that there was a legitimate reason by Hamas coming into Israel, slaughtering babies in the cribs, raping women, killing children in the arms of their parents. That is a bunch of BS. I sent him a letter.
Should he resign?
Good. I think he needs to walk it back. He has forever tainted himself with our friends in Israel. The bottom line here is it's almost like saying you need to understand the Nazi side of the story in World War II. No, you don't. There's no moral equivalence here. These are terrorists who are trying to kill all the Jews. Let me tell you, Israel's trying not to kill Palestinian civilians. That's the policy of the Israeli government, is to try not to kill innocent people. Hamas wants to kill innocent people, including their own. So there's no moral equivalency here. It was an inappropriate statement. If I can get a Democrat to join me to say Iran's the bad guy. If the war expands, we're going after Iran. That will be a great help to our friends in Israel. Pray that I can find a Democrat or several of them that will deliver that message to avoid this war from getting larger.
All right, we will certainly do that. One final question for you. As you were interacting with the Prime Minister and other friends in Israel, what's their sense in terms of America standing with them?
They were very appreciative of a bipartisan delegation, 5 R's, 5 D's from the Senate. They're very appreciative of what President Biden's done. They're worried we're not sending the deterrent message to Iran strong enough. They appreciate America's support. They've had a gut punch. There's been this idea that Israel, is controlling everything. Well, we missed 9/11. We missed Pearl Harbor. These things happen. Israel needs us as not only supplier weapons, but they need us as people. They have been wounded. They're our friends. And when a friend is down and out, you come to them not only to help them financially, but spiritually.
Yeah.
They need our spiritual help as much as our weapons.
Yeah, the moral support, knowing that you're not alone in this battle, is tremendously important. Senator, I know you got to go. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Thank you. God blesses those who bless Israel. God bless.
All right. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Actually, I'd love to have Lindsey on the program because he understands foreign policy. Now, he's a little more hawkish than I am, and he and I have talked about that. But he understands the chessboard, the global chessboard, and how all these pieces fit together. And I'll tell you, this administration doesn't. We were talking earlier about their top foreign policy priorities. And again, the president coming out of his own mouth just 3 weeks ago, it's all about the LGBTQ. And it is what has sent a message of weakness to the world. And there's not a single doubt, not an ounce of doubt in my mind, that this turbulence that we're seeing globally, this turmoil, is the result of failed leadership by the present administration and the pushing of the wrong policies. And Senator Graham's right. I think the best thing to keep Iran in check is to let them know there's a price to pay for this. All right, folks, we're out of time. Let me encourage you once again, text the word speaker to 67742 and pledge to pray for Mike Johnson, the new speaker, and the House of Representatives. That's speaker to 67742. Until next time, I leave you once again with the encouraging words the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you've taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you've heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com. Also, to leave a comment about Washington Watch, call our watch line at 1-866-372-7234. That's 1-866-372-7234.